Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host Parishmita and we have with us Neha Pant Tewari as the guest speaker to discuss on the topic happiness in the workplace. Neha is a happiness coach and youth mentor. She is the founder of Your Success Story and an international NLP practitioner certified happiness coach. What does happiness at work means? How do we shift our thinking about happiness at work? And how can we make our lives feel more satisfying, like something that meaningfully contribute to our health and wellness? To answer these questions, we have Neha as our guest. So hi Neha, tell us about yourself, your journey, and your motivation to start your success story.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me. So honestly speaking, I started off as a banker right after my MBA. I moved on to consulting. I worked in one of the major business verticals of a Big Four for many number of years. And then thereafter, I took a conscious and long sabbatical. Now, while I was working, I was fairly happy. I was fairly contented, except for this one thing, really. Oftentimes, I always found that something deep inside me was screaming to be let out. It was begging for attention and wanting to be expressed. And I often caught myself asking this very strange question that will my professional milestone and will my financial goals, if I meet them, will I be able to experience that happiness and peace that I have been craving for a long time? And the answer almost scared me. And that is when I decided to take a sabbatical. And during that sabbatical, I worked on my own ikigai. I worked on my value system. I worked on developing my core competency. And I worked on also developing my ecology in terms of what will work for me and what will not, given the nomadic lifestyle that I have. But most importantly, Parishmita, I worked on aligning my mind, body, and spirit to the work that I do. I did not want there to be too much of a distance between what I am and what I do. I wanted my work to be my second nature. And that is how I very organically gravitated towards mentoring, towards coaching, and towards training, and found my niche in positive psychology and personal development. And that is pretty much how your success story was also born.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Thank you.
I see you gave a sneak peek to your life. I would like to add something to this. I think everyone who is working from 9 to 5, they feel the same, how to create that balance, whether it's money or overall well-being or happiness. No, everybody sometimes or the other is in the phrase when they are actually confused about life and happiness and well-being. And
absolutely.
That's how I think everything starts. Something different. They choose a different journey, they take a detour, but it's all I think everybody can relate to.
Thank you so much, Parishmita. And everything begins with you, and everything begins in the head before it actually becomes a reality. What helped me in my journey was assessing my own needs and wants, assessing my own personality, assessing my own value system. So you're absolutely right. Everybody goes through that particular phase in life, but until you take time and until you make efforts to get closer to your own self, you will continue in that journey of trust.
True. So Neha, I would like to ask, what's happiness and why it is so difficult to achieve? Why are people constantly chasing happiness?
Sure. So happiness actually is a state of mind. There are a number of definitions for happiness, but what it actually is a state of mind. It is a self-generated state of mind which may or may not be stimulated by external realities of life. Okay? So as a state of mind, happiness is always present within us. But is it as accessible as it is present? Not really. And do you know what the answer or what the reason for that is? The reason is our cluttered mind. 50 to 80%, 50 to 80% of the times, our mind is cluttered with negativity. It is cluttered with negative self-talk. It is cluttered with negative memories. It is cluttered with negative feelings. It is cluttered with negative or unresourceful emotions. And therefore, accessing the state of mind, which we called as happiness, tends to be a challenge for most of us. So until you're able to sort yourself mentally, until you're able to work on your mindset, happiness remains a challenge for most of us. That's one, Parashmita. The other reason is that happiness is actually very, very elusive by nature. It's a fleeting reality. It doesn't remain static. The finish line keeps moving and evolving as we grow and evolve in our own lives. I mean, you may think that attaining XYZ will bring me happiness, but by the time you attain that XYZ in your life, your mind is already calibrating the next happiness goals. And therefore, attaining happiness and sustaining happiness becomes a dream for most of us.
As you have said about decluttering, I think decluttering is something, we should all practice as a spiritual wellness activity in today's time. Because we are all so much stuffed with work and this load, that load, be it professional, be it personal. So it is something we need to, focus our mind on, and, we should stick to something that actually help us remain stagnant and be mindful at times. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Decluttering is one of the most important mindfulness tools, if I have to talk about it. In fact, according to one of the positive psychology gurus, Rachel Grubin, outer order brings inner calm. So the moment you start decluttering, you start calming down and getting centered. So you're absolutely right. Way to happiness and way to mental peace is definitely through decluttering.
Ultimately, everything is interlinked, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes, because you said about jumping from one thing to another, but stop doing that and remain in one place where our mind needs to be. Everything feels sorted, and that happiness comes from within, as everyone says. I think that is the first step towards happiness.
Absolutely. You're quite spot on that way. Happiness is something which actually comes from within.
Yes. Yeah. So this is on the personal level, but if we talk about employees, why should employees and employers think of cultivating happiness? How does it serve them? Are there health and wellness benefits of being happy?
Oh, that's a great question. And in fact, that's a very, very thought-worthy question, Parashmita, because especially given the fact that according to the latest Gallup report, 64% of the world workforce is disengaged at work, out of which 13 to 15% are actively disengaged at work, which is to say that they are waiting for the opportunity to leave the organizations and they're actively seeking employment outside. Okay. And while they are in the organization, they are blatantly unproductive. They are blatantly unhappy, and they are also blatantly, contributing in a very non-profitable ways in the organization. Can you imagine the kind of nightmare it is for the organizations? And therefore, prioritizing employee well-being and employee happiness and employee engagement in a visible way is so important in today's modern workshop. Now, talking about the benefits of happiness, really, in the last 20 years or so, researchers have come up with some fascinating facts about happiness. They have observed that people who are happy tend to be happier, tend to live longer. They also tend to fall sick much less often, okay? And they are much more involved in life. What that essentially boils down to is less sick days at work, more efficiency and engagement, more consistency, higher profitability, and definitely, less of insurance payouts, right? When it comes to relationship, people who are happy tend to be better at their relationships. Okay.
Yes.
Their relationships are more stable. They're also more rewarding. They are definitely the popular beings. And because of that, they're able to leverage on their social connections and get into collaborations and networking effects much better than their unhappy counterparts. And I think we all know for a fact that in a business world, collaboration and networking form the very backbone of being successful. When it comes to productivity, people who are happy are clearly more productive than people who are unhappy. I mean, they get more done in less time. They are mentally sorted, and that shows in their work. Okay? They're definitely more efficient. They are also 3 times more creative.
Yes.
And adept at problem solving than their unhappy counterparts. So as you can see, happiness has a way of raising nearly every business and education outcome. Raising sales by 37%, accuracy by almost 19%, and profitability or business profitability by a whooping 147%. Given all these statistics, today's modern world or business world, organizations cannot afford not to have happy and engaged workshop.
Yes.
That's very, very important. A happy and engaged workplace or workers are one of the key differential advantages that organizations can actually offer today to their competition.
Yes, you're talking about creating a positive work culture, which includes employee health and well-being also, right?
Absolutely. Everything from happiness to well-being to engagement.
Everything is like interlinked.
Absolutely, it indeed is.
Yes. So, as you have said, we know we mostly join or sustain an organization because it promises success linked to our happiness. So what's the relationship between overall well-being and happiness?
Okay. Overall well-being and happiness? Well, well-being is very, very important. But I think what we're talking about is success here, right? Yeah. People are moving from one organization to other organization, thinking that if they succeed in the other organization, they will probably be happier. Am I right?
Yeah.
So well-being is directly correlated to happiness. There is no doubt about that. I think what we're talking right here is about success and happiness, right? Yeah. We are trying to understand the relationship between success and happiness here.
Yes.
So, if you look at people around you, Parashmita, you will realize or you will know that people have a very typical formula for finding happiness. And this formula has actually been handed down to them from generations. And it has been reinforced at every stage of their life. The formula is that when you work hard, you will make progress. And when you make progress, you will become successful. And then you will become happy. Okay? So happiness comes at a condition. And that condition is success. This is what we are ingrained and preconditioned to believe. And here is what the research or positive psychology talks about the equation between success and happiness. What it says is that in reality, it is happiness that is the precursor to success and not the other way around. So the happier you are, the higher is your capability to become successful. The higher is your potential. Why is that? That simply is because optimism fuels motivation, which in turn fuels progress, which in turn fuels action, which in turn fuels achievement. So being happy actually gives you a certain advantage at work, a comparative advantage. And that is what we call as a happiness advantage. And therefore, instead of, like you also said, people move on to the other organizations to become successful and hoping that they will become happy, right?
Yes.
So people tend to link the two concepts together so tightly that they confuse the one with the other. And the call to action here is that instead of hooking or, attaching your happiness goals to your success goals or to your external achievement goals, try and pursue the two together independently of each other. When you do that, you will no longer be confusing one with the other.
Yes.
And please understand that chasing success for the sake of success does not guarantee happiness. Until you're able to pursue your abilities or pursue your pursuits, aligning them with your values, aligning them with your talents, aligning them with your meaning and purpose, a sense of fulfillment will continue to elude you. No matter how much money you're making, no matter how many professional milestones you have achieved, no matter what your status is there in the society.
Yes, indeed. Talking about the formula, as you have mentioned, like I also think the definition of success is not definite. And we also confuse that thing, like what I get to know from your answer is like we often confuse happiness, success, and money. Like we cannot say they're chasing success or happiness. They side by side are also chasing money, right? So here is one question to you, Neha. Is there a relationship between money and happiness? When people choose a higher salary over things, is it a sure shot way to make them happier? What's your opinion on that?
Wow, that is a that's a loaded question, to be honest with you. So the relationship between money and happiness is a complicated one, to be very honest with you. And there is a good reason for that, because there are a lot of factors that happiness depends upon. I mean, it also depends upon, especially, when it comes to relating money to happiness, it depends a lot on where you are at life. It also depends upon your responsibilities. It depends upon your value system. It depends upon your priorities. It also depends upon your personality to a certain extent. So let's explore this question a little more because I really am interested to do that.
I'm eager to hear this answer.
Sure. Yeah. So what happens when you go to a mall and, when you're dining with your family and friends in a fine dining restaurant, or when you're able to buy that pair of shoe or that dress that has been on your mind for a days together, or when you're able to spend money on that international vacation, which you and your family and friends have been wanting to go for years together. I mean, you feel happy, you feel elated, and you feel excited, right? And there are no two ways about it. Money has been able to buy you that pleasure. My question to you, however, is that for how long can you sustain this happiness that you procure by spending money? In case of a meal, the answer probably is till the next meal. In case of materialistic pleasures like, your accessories and whatever, the answer is 24 to 48 hours. In case of an experience like a vacation, it will continue to rise high till the vacation lasts. And after that, your happiness will take a dip, right? So money can buy you comforts. Money can buy you safety. Money can buy you conveniences, which may or may not lead you to a short-term happiness. But when it comes to a long-term happiness, external realities like money, power, fame, looks, education, all these things barely contribute to about 10% of your happiness. What about the rest 90%? 90% of your happiness purely depends upon how your brain processes the external reality, on the kind of internal dialogue which you have with yourself, the kind of filters that you use to process or see the world around you. And I think that is one reason why, like you initially said in the beginning of our podcast today, happiness is an inside job. That is precisely what it means. Now, Parashmita, here is a critical part of today's conversation. What I want people to understand is that your need for happiness cannot override your need for safety. Okay? So until you feel secure in your job, until you feel mentally and physically safe, until you feel financially secure for that matter, happiness will remain or continue to remain a challenge for you. All right. So, it all depends on what stage of life you are at. What are the kind of responsibilities that you have? Because if in case the base level of your survival pyramid is not fulfilled and the resources which are required to fulfill them are financial resources, then your intrinsic motivator will be to show up for money. Okay, money will actually be a source of happiness for you because it will be able to buy you all those survival needs which are there, which have to be fulfilled if you want to kind of go ahead in your need pyramid. But after a certain point in your career and after a certain point in your life, after you have achieved a kind of financial freedom and kind of professional position or professional goals for that matter, money tends to play a smaller part in your long-term happiness. I hope I've made that equation between money and career and money and salary and money and happiness a little more sorted for the listeners.
Yeah, I think, Neha, it was one good example. And I got my answers. I guess our listeners also got their answer because the way you explained it, it was so wise. And
Thank you.
I think it's like for everyone, they go through this dilemma in their life, to choose what and what not.
Absolutely. And happiness is also very, very subjective in nature. It differs from person to person. It differs from moment to moment. It differs from culture to culture. It differs from geography to geography. Certain cultures attach a lot of importance to monetary long-term benefits. Certain cultures believe in living in the present and enjoying the pleasures, daily pleasures. So it depends on where your mindset comes from as well.
In a very wider perspective, it is true that it differs from region to region, place to place, people to people, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
With that. So, Neha, in what ways can we be happy? How can professionals find happiness at the workplace amongst deadlines and heavy workloads? What does professional happiness actually depends upon?
Wow. So we've gotten into the right, the meat of it now. So happiness, the rules for happiness remain pretty much the same, Parashmita, whether it is personal happiness or it is professional happiness. The context, however, changes significantly. So what we've seen so far is that 10% of our happiness is sourced from the external circumstances, right? Now, 50% of your happiness, which is half of your happiness, is genetically determined. Yes, biology does have a say in your happiness perspective. Remaining 40% of your happiness, which is a sizable chunk of your happiness, is derived from the environment that you live in. And this is the chunk of happiness, which is a controllable chunk of happiness. You can work around it and you can manage it to make you either less miserable or more happy, as the case may be. Now, how does this play out in a workspace scenario? So your element, ideally or broadly speaking, consists of these few things, like relationships, first of all. The quality of your daily interactions. How is your equation with your boss? And how is your equation with your colleagues? Do you think you're working with the right set of people or not? Then, of course, there is engagement, the task at hand. How engaged are you at your work? Are you able to sense a state of flow or not? What is the component of work that you really like? And how much time are you able to spend on that? Then there are stressors at work, because there is nothing that is called as an ideal workplace, right? It'll always have its own share of stressors or, those components that throw you off or irk you. So how close or how further away are you from your stressors? Finally, the mindset or the perception that you have about the organization that you're working for and also about your roles and responsibilities at work. Does it allow you to impact your environment and make contributions like you would have wanted to? Are you able to impact your organization your environment and leave places, people and processes a little better than what they were? What about the financial well-being? What about the work-life balance? What about freedom and autonomy? All these things have their own say in the employee happiness. Okay. Now, what helps you to control or manage this environment is what we call as certain practices or certain habits of happiness. These are very simple practices which probably everybody is aware of, but they probably do not know the gravity of, continuing to use these practices. These are things like journaling. These are things like physical exercise, like gratitude, like meditation, like kindness. Okay. If you can spend some time in just focusing on your breath in your workspace, you will instantly, have access to your calmer emotions. Pranayams like Brahmari or bee breath is one good example which brings your cortisol level and which brings your heart rate down almost instantly. If you are able to volunteer or mentor a junior or a new joinee, that would be a source of happiness for you. One of the key elements for workplace happiness is having a best friend at work. Having a best friend at work increases your engagement by a good about 46%. Okay. Also, if you're able to write a gratitude mail every single day to somebody who's been a part of your team, either in the same workplace or in a previous workplace, that would also help you to train your mind to perceive your work differently. So these are a few things that people can do at work, and they can actually grow their happiness quotient.
Yes, Neha, I think it was a very insightful information that you gave us. And that was something new, which I also got to know. So thank you for that. And I think, this podcast is going to be helpful for many who are, looking for this particular questions. Maybe because they have this fear, they cannot speak it up, say this to anyone. They have this confusion. But, they have a very less knowledge on this thing, like this confusion. I think this podcast will help those people, learn or know something more about happiness in the workplace and how they should be happy personally on personal level.
I would be so happy if that happens.
Yeah, it will happen.
Living my own purpose.
Like it was helpful for me indeed. So I have noticed you call yourself a happiness hacker. What is it? Can you share some hacks that can be used at the workplace, Neha?
Sure. So what we've seen so far is that 40% of our happiness is derived from the environment, right? So if you're able to populate positive emotions in your daily interactions, in the daily micro and macro task that you do, in your mindset that you carry every single day, you will be upping your chance at happiness, right? So happiness hacking is simply making these positive emotions available on demand. Simply put, it is a practice of creating a direct and straight access to the positive emotions which are there within you so that you can create happiness at will. I mean, simply put, that is what it is. And one of the finest examples of a happiness hack that comes to my mind instantly as you talk about workplace happiness is the flash mobs. So, the flash mobs are when a group of people randomly get up from their seats, and as the clock strikes 3 or 5:30 or whatever time, they break into a dance movement and the music is playing loudly. Now that dance movement does not last for more than 2 to 2.5 minutes, but the impact it has on the work floor or on the employees in that particular floor or work area is phenomenal. Absolutely. The positive emotions which are developed because of that continue to last for more than a couple of hours. And, people are filled with enthusiasm, excitement, energy, agility, and a lot of connectedness as well. So when they get back to work or their workstations, and when they start to pick up from where they left, they are filled with greater sense of engagement and happiness.
Also with energy. They are filled with energy after that thing.
Absolutely. They are filled with that enthusiasm and energy to work even more. work even longer hours for that matter.
Yes. So Neha, coming to the end of this session, can you tell our listeners where can they find you? How do they connect with you?
Sure. So I'm available on LinkedIn as Neha Tewari. I'm available on Instagram as Your Success Story with Neha. And then I have my own website, which is yoursuccessstory.org. Connect me, drop in a message, and I would be happy to help you elevate your happiness quotient and help you write your very own happy success story.
Indeed. I'll be the first one to do that.
Looking forward.
Looking forward for it, Neha. So Neha, thank you for coming to our show. It was wonderful having you here, and thank you for sharing so much of valuable insights with us. I hope our listeners will be benefited from this session.
Thank you so much, Parashmita. It was a pleasure and an honor being here. Thank you so much once again for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.